Well, today we learned an appeals court rejected President-elect Donald Trump's bid to overturn a jury's verdict that found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation. The case stems from a lawsuit brought by writer Carroll and upholds the $5 million award granted to her. In May of 2023, a federal jury found him civilly liable for sexually abusing Carroll in the 90s in a department store dressing room and then defaming her. Trump tried arguing the trial judge violated his rights by allowing certain evidence, including the testimony of two women who shared stories of their alleged encounters with Trump that bore similarities to Carroll's story. A three-judge federal appeals panel rejected Trump's argument and ruled he is not entitled to a new trial. Trump has vehemently denied Carroll's allegations and has vowed to appeal the case as far as the Supreme Court. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now. So, Ed, let's start there. Are Trump and his team saying anything yet about this appeals court decision?
Lindsay, no formal comment from the Trump team yet to this case. And as you laid out there, remember, this is a civil case, not a criminal case. There was no guilty verdict in this case, just that he was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation, which means that a jury had decided there was a preponderance of evidence supported the sexual abuse and defamation claims. And essentially, the judges said the jury had found that Trump more likely than not committed sexual abuse and defamation in this case. It is one of a handful of legal challenges that continue to face the president-elect as he prepares to move back to the White House, even though he's cleared the decks of some of the more significant ones in the past year.
Let's go ahead and shift gears here. Trump made a couple of comments regarding the passing of former President Jimmy Carter, saying, quote, "While I strongly disagreed with him philosophically and politically, I also realized that he truly loved and respected our country and all it stands for. He worked hard to make America a better place, and for that, I give him my highest respect." What can you tell us about the relationship between the two former presidents?
Not terribly close and not one that found much agreement on policy or politics, but that is perhaps in keeping with how Carter's four other living successors may have had their relationship with Carter shaped at various times. He was someone known to speak out about what the sitting president may or may not have been doing at the time. Where they might have found agreement, for example, was on North Korea. Carter, of course, had visited to help get hostages freed. Trump, of course, met with Kim Jong-un. So dialogue with people like Kim Jong-un is something that Carter would have promoted and would have liked to have seen. But in other regards, whether it's Cuba, whether it's the situation in the Middle East, whether it's the 2020 election and how it should have been treated, the 2016 election and how it should have been treated, they would have had sharp disagreements. Either way, a positive sign perhaps for those concerned how Trump might react to this news. No indication yet from him or the other former presidents whether they indeed plan to attend the state funeral now scheduled for next Thursday in Washington. But if tradition and the health of the former presidents and their spouses hold, they should all be in attendance, at least at the funeral, again in Washington next week.
Let's shift to politics. Trump today endorsed Speaker Mike Johnson to remain in his role when the 119th Congress begins next week. How much easier will it be for Johnson to make the case to the entire caucus that he deserves to hold on to the gavel?
Well, that's unclear, Lindsay, because remember when they held that vote just before Christmas about that short-term spending plan that the president-elect preferred, one that would have just extended federal spending levels through March and perhaps would have dealt with the debt ceiling being lifted as well. 38 House Republicans voted against the president-elect's wishes. So we know of at least 4 or 5 House Republicans who don't, at least right now, publicly support Speaker Johnson. You may think to yourself, well, why does that matter? You got to remember, going into next year, when the new Congress starts on Friday, they are so closely divided that Speaker Johnson can afford to lose but 2 votes if all members of the new House of Representatives show up to cast ballots. And if you've got 4 at least saying they've got concerns, that could spell trouble for him. It might mean Republicans end up going into that sort of vortex of figuring out amongst themselves, well, who else could possibly be elected as our leader? Trump doing this today signals that he still supports the Speaker for what he's done so far, believes he's been loyal to the president-elect's agenda. They, of course, have been pretty much joined at the hip since the later months of the election, trying to coordinate on policy and messaging. And in recent weeks, Trump has been relatively pleased with how the Speaker has been making things move along. But there were reports, of course, that they had disagreements over that short-term spending plan. Either way, no guarantee Johnson wins the vote on Friday just because the former president, the president-elect, has weighed in.
We will be watching at O'Keefe, where in Palm Beach it is another day of sun and a busy day on the water behind you. Thanks so much.